Grandpa, however, left me halfway through it, saying that he would go to Gyanma Patel's threshing floor to fetch a tripod and a few measures of corn. I was left alone. So now, after this Babu Patel left the floor, this grandpa went to another landlord's threshing floor so that he can get another share of corn as well. The pathetic condition of this Dalit community is beautifully portrayed in a very touching manner by Bandhu Madhav. I was working hard at the threshing floor. The red-hot sun was scorching me. The exhaustion caused by the hard work and unbearable heat of the sun made me sweat profusely all over. I was famished, but there was no trace of Grandpa, and I was far from achieving the target. Wild ideas began to cook in the heated cauldron of my brain. I was worried at the thought of Babu Patel turning up suddenly and finding the job unfinished. And since I had already roused his anger, I thought I was going to be an easy prey. And before the thought died away, Babu Patel, now accompanied by Tuka Magdum, arrived there quite unexpectedly. I was scared stiff. I was lagging behind in my work. There was no trace of Grandpa yet. And here appears my tormentor. You, grandson of Italia, has your grandfather dropped dead? Shouted Babu Patel. So Babu Patel found this young boy alone. He is gone to Gyanma Patel's farm to fetch a tripod. I faltered, already frightened. At that, Babu Patel was extremely furious and started abusing Grandpa in the most humiliating terms. Has he gone to fetch the tripod or to war with his wife? Tuka Magdum did his bit faithfully by aggravating the matter. Oh, these Mahars are lousy, Lord. You will never find them at their work. These good-for-nothing fellows only know to while away their time. So, the situation is very much pathetic now, and this boy is frightened, and this Babu Patel along with this Tuka Magdum, they are all enraged with Grandpa and Mahadeva. I could control myself no more, and yet I found myself pleading before Babu Patel. Why do you abuse him? Grandpa will be here soon. Unknowingly, I had added fuel to the fire, for the inflamed Patel was now screaming with biting sarcasm. So you don't want me to abuse your grandfather? Should I then touch his feet? And turning to Tuka Magdum, he said, I have been watching this chap since morning. This brat of a Mahar has been rudely answering me back. No use telling me, Anna. Just give him a hard kick in the loins. He deserves nothing better than that. Tuka Magdum incited him. So he is more and more angry towards this young boy for talking back to him. Presently, Grandpa arrived, running like mad. His very appearance was enough for Babu Patel to let loose his volley of abuse. I say, Atalia, were you assigned to do a job or to play hide and seek? It's past noon now, and this grandson of yours has only been toying with the weeds. Stop working this instant at the threshing floor. I shall manage it myself. Get up. I will give you nothing. Get up. Don't do a harsh thing like that, Anna. You can kick us if you like, but please don't starve us. So, if they are denied that work, they won't get anything to eat that day. They will be simply starving. Grandpa pleaded with tears in his eyes, but the stony heart Patel was not moved. We eventually finished the assigned job and got the bullocks yoked and moved them onto the threshing floor. But after we had toiled throughout the day, Babu Patel did not give Grandpa even a few measures of jowar. Grandpa was crestfallen as we dejectedly left the threshing floor. However, Grandpa could not fail to notice the pen where stale, rancid piece of bread lay scattered on the ground in front of the oxen. It's rightly said that, as the charmer has his eye on the chapel, so does the Mahar on stale bread. Flies were swarming over the moldering crumbs, which are turned green and foul. So what happened was, towards the end of the day, the work was finished, but they were denied their due wages. They were not given bread, corn or jowar, and they were going back to the house, to the hut. And on the way, on the stable, he saw a few stale bread which had already turned green and moldering, swarming bees, swarming flies were over it. And Grandma begged Babu Patel for those crumbs. The oxen seemed to have refused to eat them. They were smeared with dung and urine. Grandpa collected them all with happy excitement and neatly put them into his sackcloth, and he left the place, but not before blessing the Patel. I followed him with my head hung low. There was a heavy silence between us. Finally breaking it, Grandpa said, "The landlord got so angry with me because of you, Madhava. I had thought that, having toiled the whole day, we would get a larger measure of corn. Now, what shall we have for supper?" So they don't have anything to eat that night. "And we'll gulp down the crumbs you collected. Haven't we got those rotten pieces as reward for laboring all day long? A good exchange indeed. Are we any better than cats or dogs? Throw few crumbs at us and we are happy," I said mockingly. "You said it," Grandpa exclaimed. "Madhava, will the Mars and Mangs never be happy? What a humiliating life we live. Do you think I feel happy about being oppressed by the landlords and the rest of the villagers? I too want to retaliate and have a good fight for the humiliation and injustice they have been piling upon us. But my boy, I am helpless. I see no end to this suffering," lamented Grandpa. So we hear how they are suffering throughout their life, and says, they can never be happy. They are the humiliation and injustice shown towards them, and this grandpa also wanted to retaliate, but he is helpless, and he is too dependent on them for their daily food, daily bread. But why should it go on? Even a lion locked in a cage all his life forgets how to hunt. This hereditary land right has trapped us Mahas for good. Now, can we dream of doing business independently, since we have been fed all our lives on the charity of others? What achievement can we ever boast of? All that comes from begging is more begging. So, right from the beginning, they are being slaving and still begging. So now they can't do anything independently. They still beg for their food. As I erupted spiritedly, filled with disgust, Grandpa Athelya stood gaping at me, stunned. I could see the admiration he felt for me. He seemed to me enveloped by an impenetrable darkness on all sides. After a while he said, "Madhava, I fully agree with what you say, but how does one escape from the fix of this hereditary holding?" "By abandoning it. There is no alternative," I replied immediately. He walked in silence for a few moments. He looked as if he were lost in deep thought. Suddenly he stopped and, turning to me, asked, "How will the Mahas survive if they abandon the land right? Thanks to it, we can at least get these stale bread. Only this way can I approach the landlord and beg for bread as my right. But if that too is gone, what are we left with? We don't have land, we don't have anything to do, we'll be starving." When I said we should abandon the land right, I didn't mean we should give it up literally, but we must stop begging under the pretext that we are getting our rightful share of corn. And instead of enslaving ourselves to lifelong labor in exchange for that right, we must free ourselves from the land bondage and learn to live independently with a sense of pride. This is the voice of Bandhu Madhav, the author himself. We Mahas have been misled by the false notion of land right, taking it as a rightful favor to beg for bread as long as we live. We forget all the while that the crumbs they give us make us slaves. I suddenly stopped talking as we approached home. "You are right, my boy. I am convinced you have touched my heart," said Grandpa, and threw a few crumbs from his sack to the dogs squatting opposite our house. Grandma came rushing out of the house and shouted at Grandpa, "Have you gone mad? If you give all those food to the dogs, what will we eat?" She collected all the peas thrown even before the dog, which was covered with mud and dust, and cleaned the mud of them. She then mixed them with some jully and cooked them for supper. At night, everyone at home greedily hogged the stuff. What with the heavy meal, we fell asleep immediately after supper. But something strange happened in the morning. But the next morning, we woke up to the sound of Grandpa writhing in agony like a poisoned dog. He was vomiting and purging too. All the neighbors huddled together and started suggesting various types of remedies. I was sitting by Grandpa's bed, helpless and confused. But even at the time, in spite of myself, I could visualize the entire predicament of the Maha caste. In those frenzied moments, I thought I saw the crumbling, mildewed pieces of bread smeared with dung and urine taken from Bapu Patel's cow pen floating before my eyes. He knew that his grandfather was suffering from food poisoning. The share of corn which Grandpa always took as his rightful dole from the Babu Patel, I was convinced beyond doubt, had caused the vomiting and dysentery. He seemed to have taken it to heart the whole episode at Patel's threshing floor. Sitting by the side of his bed, shedding tears, he felt benumbed and despondent. My mind was wailing in agony. When shall the meek and humble people of my community be uplifted? And when shall be treated like human beings? In the meantime, my maternal uncle had brought a doctor all the way from Sankley. Examining Grandpa, the doctor asked, "What did he eat last night?" I went into the kitchen and brought the earthen pot in which the rancid pieces of bread mixed with dooley had been cooked. Putting it in front of the doctor, I said, "These are 4-day-old stale and mouldering pieces of bread cooked with dooley. This is what we ate last night." The doctor looked surprised as he said, "That's it. The mold in the stuff created toxin. That toxin must have caused his dysentery. It's a serious case." Grandpa showed great amazement as he lay in the bed. "What do you say? The crumbs are turned to poison." It was, in fact, poison. Poisoned bread? Really poison? He was amazed with that concept. Grandpa lost hope. The dysentery and the vomiting had almost killed him, and the doctor's diagnosis was the last straw. None of the medicines suggested by the doctor proved effective, and we became helpless. Seeing him writhing in agony, I broke down and in an emotionally choked voice said to him, "Grandpa, Grandpa, please say something to me." I could say no more and started weeping. Grandma immediately joined me, and Uncle too started sobbing. They were sure that his grandpa is going to die. Mustering all his strength and with tremendous willpower, Grandpa finally succeeded in articulating these final words, which is actually an advice, a warning to this young boy. "Madhav, don't weep, my boy. I am an old thing now, and being so old, I may stop breathing any moment. What can I say to you now? I can only say, never depend on the age-old bread associated with our caste. Get as much education as you can. Take away this accursed bread from the mouths of the Mahas. This poisonous bread will finally kill the very humanness of man. So it is only education that will liberate you." Then he stopped abruptly, turned his face away, and closed his eyes forever. So Grandma was the first one to react. So these are the final words of this old man to his grandson. The need for education and how it will liberate them from this poisoned bread associated with their caste. Grandma was the first to react. She broke into a loud wailing. My aunt joined her, and then everybody raised a deafening lament. The ominous lapwings too were producing shrill and piercing notes in the sky. I was numb. Everything was numb. He was actually thinking about the words of his grandfather reverberated in his mind. Amidst the commotion, I could still hear Grandpa's last words. The poisonous bread will finally kill the very humanness of man. The recollection of these words put a stop to my sorrow in the loss of my beloved Grandpa. They inflamed me with a sense of fury and disgust, prompting me to retaliate. And therefore, when it is harvest time with its operations of winnowing and sifting, and the birds swirl in the sky, my heart bleeds like a wounded bird as I recall the begone harvest 12 years ago when he lost his grandfather, and the warning, the lesson that the grandfather gave this young boy, the final words, reverberates in his mind. Thank you.